Hello, everybody, and happy 4th of July week. As you can see, Ian, my guest today, and myself dressed for the occasion. Fun fact for anyone that doesn't know, I used to be a teacher, so I have an astounding amount of holiday-themed hair accessories that I really wanted to bring out to be a part of our video to celebrate the 4th of July. So this week, Ian and I are going to talk about the importance of why in change management. But before we dive in, Ian, would you mind giving everybody a quick introduction?
Sure. So my name is Ian Wilson. I'm the implementation and training specialist here at Naviant. A little bit of background about myself. I've worked in the kind of IT tech industry my whole career. I started more on the technical side, so doing some more of the programming, coding, and technical kind of problem solving and supporting. From there, I transitioned a bit more into working more with people on project management and implementations. I decided I liked people enough that I kept moving towards the training and testing side of things. So I've kind of worked my way through a lot of that implementation process, and I've liked where I've landed here with training.
Wonderful. So Ian and I have talked a lot about the importance of why. And as I mentioned, I used to be a teacher. And so to me, the idea of understanding why you're doing something is so critical for people across the board, whether you're a 12-year-old learning about social studies and asking how you're going to use that when you grow up, or you're somebody who's faced with a transition at work and needs to understand the why there. So Ian, going off of that, can you help us understand from your perspective why the why is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. Why on the why? So when it comes to getting into learning, a sense of investment is really important to actually understand stuff. I know for myself, it's hard for me to be invested or to really be engaged in learning if I don't know why I'm going about it. Sometimes school can be challenging. Why am I learning calculus if I'm not going to use it, right? Mm-hmm. Or the more invested that you become, the better your retention is, right? And the more you're going to adopt what you learn. And so in order to get to that investment, it's really important to understand why you're doing that. How is that going to affect you? What is the gain from learning this? And why is it important? Information.
Wonderful. So then when we start to talk about communicating the why, from your experience with our customers or maybe in a past life, what are some of the ways that you've seen organizations share that why very effectively?
Yeah, I think sharing is kind of the key word there, right? It's communication. When it comes to talking about the why and going through that process, the more you communicate and the more it's never a surprise is really what becomes important. When we're talking about how people communicate that, you don't want to inundate people with a lot of information. You want to make sure that folks are just aware this is why we're doing something so that they get that sense of investment from it. Trying to think of kind of a specific example here. If folks are struggling with a certain workflow at their organization, and we want to make a change for that, and the first time they're finding out about that change is when they're being trained on the change, it's going to be a little bit hard for them to want to be invested, be a part of that process, right? But if they find out, hey, this thing that you don't like, we're working on. Oh, that's exciting. Why are we working on that? Because, well, you don't like it, right? we go through that process. By the time we get to the training, they're excited for it because they're ready for that change. And it's a lot easier to be invested and adopt the change from that perspective.
And I think one of the things, too, that Gary Carter, one of our colleagues, during a previous conversation said to me that really clicked in my mind was the idea of making your communication through change management almost a marketing effort internally. And I've seen some of our customers do this really effectively with internal communications that are being sent out that, again, are just playing that hype role for the change, getting everyone all excited for what's coming down the pipeline. So rather than dreading it, they're excited for that transition and that improvement. But then also during all of their status calls or meetings where we're planning out what the solution looks like, or reviewing even like the unexciting specification side of things, they start each one of those meetings with objectives for the project. And again, really bringing everybody, that group of 20, 30 people that are part of those meetings, back to the why, back to the objective for the project. And I think that that's been really, really effective for that customer specific. So last question for you today, Ian, then is how do you translate that why to ownership in the change management process?
Yeah, and that's really, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier. You want folks to feel invested in the solution. You want them to have that sense of ownership, because that's how you get through to seeing kind of the success on the other end. I think communicating that is really talking about what they're going to see and how it's going to affect them, right? Alluding back to that topic I brought earlier, if there's a process that everyone doesn't like, right? Wanting to be the person who helps fix that process, wanting to be like, hey, I'm going to make this better for you, right? That does tend to promote more of that investment and willingness to want to see the other side, right? Because that's one of the biggest challenges with going through a change. Nobody likes change. Nobody wants to go through the hurdle. No one wants to be surprised by it, but everybody wants to be on the other side. Definitely when they're on the other side, I want to be like, I made this happen. Look at that, right? So being able to really get the sense that this is a problem that's affecting all of us. And I think that with these changes, we can make it better, and having everyone talk about how we're going to make it better, and then continuing to repeat that communication, right? As you mentioned with that customer example, every time that you go through a meeting, you want to make sure people know where we are, and we circle back to that objective, right? Circle back to why are we doing this? Make sure people have that sense of we are owning the solution. It's not just taking off on its own and now we're stuck because we're on a runaway horse, right? So I hope that answered your question there.
It did. And one thing that actually popped into my mind while you were talking about that is that idea of what's in it for me. And if you have a really strong understanding of why the change is happening at an organizational level, they're able to take ownership of that why and turn it into that what's in it for me. And whether you want to admit it, sometimes humans are a little bit selfish creatures, and we need to understand what is the outcome going to do for us to be really excited about that change. And so I think it's just another way of kind of phrasing what you said, is that idea of the WIFM, or what's in it for me. So before I head off, I want to thank you again for joining the 4th of July edition of Transformation Talks. And have a great day, everybody.